smoldering topics on a weekly basis. Your participation is important.
Good morning and welcome to yet another edition of The Burning Issue. This is the Thursday edition and we are grateful that you found time to tune in and welcome to it. Remember that The Burning Issue is live on our partner radio stations as well. And let me quickly make mention of the partner radio stations carrying this program live today. We're live on Tuta FM in Mansa, covering the rest of Luapula province on 90.7 FM. We are also live in Chinsali on Muchinga Radio, covering Muchinga province on 88.1. Kapiri and Central Province is well covered on ZFM on 100.3 FM. And in Kabwe, we are live on Spice FM on 91.1. Ndola and the rest of the Copper Belt is covered on Platinum Radio, that is on 99.7, and also Highwave FM in Chingola, equally covering the rest of the Copper Belt on 90.1. We are also live on our Facebook page, that's 5FM Radio Zambia. And later on in the course of the program, I'll give you, our listener, an opportunity to call in and interact with our guest. And I'm your host, Zachariah Banda. Our guest today is Prince Akashambatwa Mbikusita-Lewanika. Thought it was important because we haven't had a conversation with him in the longest time possible. Dr. Akashambatwa Mbikusita-Lewanika, welcome to the program.
Thank you very, very much. It's an honor, a privilege, and a
right,
so that we can share whatever we need to share.
Indeed.
With yourselves as well as with the listeners, wherever they are.
Indeed. And really invitation, and it was very much at short notice, but you still were willing to be with us. We appreciate that.
Yes, no, the pleasure is mine, and because I've been very worried that I'm worried about the future generation, the future governance in Africa.
Right.
Whether we have a generation that can carry on the freedom struggle and the development agenda going forward, that understand where we are coming from and what our aspiration as Africans have been, what the challenges have been, and what our vision of Africa is. So it's very, very important to share that so that as much as possible, we can hand over to a generation that understands where we are coming from, where we are, and why we are where we are, and where we want to be.
Very interesting. Now, briefly, I know that we have some listeners who may not really know you per se. Briefly, just give us a brief background of who Akashambatwa Mbikusita-Lewanika is.
Well, I'm Akashambatwa Mbikusita-Lewanika. My name itself maybe gives you the background.
Right.
I'm the son of Mbikusita-Lewanika, the founder, President General of the Northern Rhodesia African Congress, which was the first political party in Northern Rhodesia, I was born the year the Congress was formed, in 1948. This is also the year when the Human Rights Declaration in the world was made. And also the year that the first trade union was formed in Northern Rhodesia. And my father was also the last son of King Lewanika I to be on the throne of Barosland as King Lewanika II. So that is my family background. I was educated in Kitwe, in Kana, to be precise.
Okay.
And Tunduya near Munali in Lusaka, and also in England, in Canada, in the United States of America. I worked for over a dozen years in the Industrial Development Corporation.
Yeah.
And also worked in private sector as a general manager of Blackwood Hodge And also my last working, I was managing director of the Tanzania-Zambia Railway, Tazara, before retiring. In politics, I was the first field organizer towards the reintroduction of multi-party democracy.
Right.
I was the founder secretary general of the MMD. And whoever joined MMD was either recruited by myself or recruited by those I recruited.
Indeed.
Yeah. So, but I've also been in the opposition. So I've been in parliament both on the ruling party benches and on the opposition benches.
Interesting.
And I've been a revolutionary, changing the country from a one-party state to a multi-party democracy. So I feel burdened that when we started the multi-party campaign was in criticizing the deterioration, the betrayal of the independence promises of freedom by degenerated into a one-party state. So when we opposed the one-party state, we were trying to reintroduce genuine democracy. And we changed some things, didn't change some other things. So it is a major concern of mine that despite change to a multi-party democracy on paper, in practice, we haven't changed. And some of the problems we are facing are the old problems that we thought we had addressed, which have not been addressed properly.
And of course, politically, I did make mention in my preamble, in my introduction of yourself, that you're also a former cabinet minister, and you did also work in the office of the president.
Yes. Yes, I did. After we reintroduced multi-party democracy, I became a minister in Mr. Chiluba's government, but only for 9 months, because within that first 9 months, it was quite clear that we were degenerating back into one-party state. For instance, throughout the one-party state governance, in fact, throughout the independence period up to the end of the one-party state, Zambia was on a permanent state of emergency. And we had campaigned to end that, but there was an attempt to reintroduce it after we came to government. So I opposed that and many other things, economic policies, governance, corruption. So after 9 months of being a cabinet minister, I resigned, first to go back to the backbench within the ruling party, then finally forming the National Party and later Agenda for Zambia as an opposition party. All these parties were formed for the same purpose, trying to realize the real promises of independence, the real promises of the return to multi-party democracy. Then after Mwanawasa became president, I supported him because after I resigned, he later also resigned for some of the same reasons. So we wanted,
you had like minds.
Him. And that's how I returned to MMD, but only in the party, not in the government. I also served as one of the commissioners, the anti-corruption commissioners, which is really not a full-time job of any kind, under Mwanawasa. Then when he passed away, I was also very instrumental in identifying Mr. Zachariah Banda and bringing him as Mwanawasa's vice president. So I supported him coming back as president after the death of President Mwanawasa. And when he became president, he appointed me as a special assistant political affairs. In fact, then after a year, they sent me to Tazara as managing director. After that, I retired from work and began other activities.
Yeah. Well, quite a rich CV that you have. And what are you doing now?
I'm doing a lot of writing. I'm doing a lot of discussions. As I say, I'm not quite sure whether the promises of independence and the promises of returning to Mountbat have really taken root. So I'm very, very worried about that. I'm very, very concerned. And every day there is evidence that, in fact, we failed. We failed to attain real independence. We failed to establish real democratic governance. And all our problems, both economic and political, are a testament to that failure.
So, are you a sad man looking at the how democracy
I'm very
has
concerned.
panned out in Zambia?
Yes, I'm very disappointed, very concerned, and very worried. In some cases, the situation has been revealed to be worse than it was even before. Because I've said that we taught Zambians their rights to choose a government of their choice, that it's their right to change governments when they are dissatisfied. They seem to have learned that lesson of changing governments, but they've not learned the lesson of changing one government administration for a better and different government institution. So even when we change political parties which in the ruling party, their behavior are the same. We've changed the presidents, we've changed political parties, but maintained essentially the one-party governance system with personalized leadership, with ruling party presuming themselves to own government and running government for their president and running government for their party, and really derecognizing the role of opposition parties. And very poor relationship among political leaders. The failure to respect other people's viewpoint. The assumption that once you are elected to a position, it's almost treason for anybody to even think of removing you. Which is a testament that we have not accepted the promises of independence and the promises of returning to multi-party democracy. Even some of our current problems are actually a testament to that. There are problems we don't need to have, but we have them because our leaders have a one-party state mentality. Our leaders are corrupt. Our leaders are not democratic. They don't respect other people's opinions. They think they have a right to rule for personal interests and partisan interests.
Now, let me take you backwards. It looks like some of the problems, especially hatred among leaders, seem to be something that we keep inheriting from the time you reintroduced multi-party democracy. We saw the hate of the incumbent president then, Frederick Chiluba, towards David Kaunda, and this has continued. Chiluba equally suffered what you would simply say persecution from his successor. The same seemed to have happened. We are where we are, and I believe that even the problems, and I'm bringing you now to the current situation that this country is going through, having lost the 60th president, and what is happening now seems like we are far from healing from that.
Yes, in fact, you should go further than Chiluba.
Yes.
Because from the very beginning, from the Kaunda, I know it is a sacred cow.
Right.
But all these problems manifested themselves under the first administration.
Right.
The attitude to opposition.
Right.
During the last, in the Facebook media, people reproduced a rally speech by President Kaunda in 1969.
Yes.
in which he was threatening to ban the African National Congress. So the attitude against opposition was there. Sometimes when we go at the few years before independence, there was violence, inter-party violence. We have awarded some people awards as freedom fighters, but if you dig into who were they fighting, they were stoning other Africans. UNIP cadres were fighting African National Congress cadres and vice versa. If you ask them how many imperialist white people were stoned, there will be almost none. I think there was one very dirty, murderous occasion when a white lady was burnt in her car. That was just about the only violence against white people, and it was very bad. But most of the violence was Africa against Africans over political parties. So intolerance in politics, intimidation in politics started even before independence. And after we gained our independence, in a multi-party constitution, everything was done to undermine the spirit and letter of that multi-party democracy until finally we imposed the one-party state. And for 17 years maintained the one-party state, maintained the state of emergency. People understand the Public Order Act. A state of emergency is like having multiple public order acts running at the same time, continuously. So the intolerance against others was there from very beginning. Even the hatred you are talking about.
Right.
When the opposition parties were banned in 1972, the UPP, United Progressive Party, under Mr. Kapwepwe, United Party under Mundia, were banned. And their leaders were arrested, were put in detention. So it starts from there. So unless Zambians really are honest and brutally frank about our history, we can't solve these problems. If we think they are just popping up now, and that in the past there was some golden era of democracy, then we won't solve them.
Right.
So that is very, very... So you are quite right. This is why I'm saying we've learned how to change governments, but not how to change government administration for better government administrations. We have the same attitude, Boma, that once you're a ruling party, you own. One example I can give you, which seems quite innocent, is that under the one-party state, the sole party, had its constitution attached to the Republican constitution, so that members of the Central Committee of UNIP were superior to the cabinet of ministers. And the Secretary General of the party was ranked second to the state president, even at state function. Even now, we continue to
Yes,
do
we
that.
still have that.
Whenever we have a national day of prayer, independence celebration, when you lead the protocols,
yes,
after the president and a few people, you have a Secretary General of a ruling party in a state function. That is wrong. But it's a sign of a party system which has refused to accept the promises of multi-party democracy, which separates the party from the government. We have failed to separate the party from the government. And this also materializes itself in the use of public funds. That party officials have been given access, privileges, because they are regarded as part and parcel of government, which is not right. So that my disappointment, my concern are that we need to go back to the drawing board. to reconstitute Zambia, if it is redeemable, and to reconstitute real democracy. And the democracy is an attitude of mind. Sometimes I feel that I was thinking yesterday of the biblical references that you don't put new wine in old skins, wine skins.
Yeah.
And this is what we have done. We've tried to introduce democracy in the constitutional wine skins, which are tattered of the old ones. And the wine won't hold, democracy won't hold in a framework which is basically a one-party state framework, in a framework that is where power is concentrated in the person of the president, where the ruling party owns government. And we freely say the UPND government, the MMD government. That's wrong. There's no such thing. There must always be a Zambian government. There must always be a Kenyan government, not a government belonging to Ruto's party, not a government belonging to HH's party. It must be a Zambian government. And if you don't have that, it means that even appointments to the public service, to the police, to the army, state institutions that should be above politics are decided upon along political lines. When you have a new government, you dismiss permanent secretaries and you appoint their replacements along partisan line. When you change another government, it also do the same. And that is basically what has been happening. And even our current problems are a manifestation of that sort of mentality.
Now let's get down to the elephant in the room, the state funeral.
Yes.
How did we get to this?
In a sense, it's a good thing that we've gotten into this embarrassing crisis.
Right.
Because it reveals who we are. That's what we are. I've been hearing people saying people are making tribalist statement and Zambian. That's a lie. All the tribalists I know are Zambians. So it must be Zambia. If you think it's an odd thing, then you can't solve its problem. So that the present situation is really a revelation of where we are at. We are not mature. We are not politically mature. We are not democratic. We don't separate state functions from party functions. And our political campaigns never end. Before the election, you are politicking. After the election, you are politicking throughout. Even the ruling party, everything it does after winning the election is partisan. It's politicking. So, of course, their opponents also politic. So that basically, this is where we are, and we have to solve that problem. The comforting thing, I think, is to realize that there is nothing new about this. And we shouldn't behave as if the country comes to an end because of this crisis. Because people are approaching it that if it doesn't happen the way you want it, then it's a total disaster. It cannot be allowed to happen the way you don't want it. Which is not, it's not a good attitude. We should understand when we were young, we were playing football using cloth and paper to form a ball. And the ball was very difficult. It didn't bounce very well. But occasionally we will get a real football which bounces. And sometimes it starts bouncing uncontrollable. Then in Kitwe, you hear someone say, take a ball a punch. And in this situation where this funeral is like a football which is bouncing up and down, left, right, center, uncontrollable. We should take a bowler punch and realize that it is not the end of the world. I'll give you an example. When Kwame Nkrumah was overthrown, he went into exile in Guinea. He died there. And a government which had supported his overthrow wanted to get his body back because they said he used to be head of state of Ghana. He must be given back to Ghana. Secretary of the president of Guinea refused. But when another government came, they then asked for his body back. Then there was negotiation for 3 months, from April 1972 to July 1972, before the Guinea government agreed to give back the body of Nkrumah. And then he was buried for the second time in his village in Krofu. Then 10 years later, he was reburied for the third time in what is now his memorial place in the capital. So that we should look at it that whatever happens, it will be all right. It will be all right, rather than to force situations which are grievous. We don't want a burial in which when abazali la, when aggrieved. No. We should settle down. Whatever happened is not a disaster. It can be redressed when the conditions are right for redressing it. I think that's the comfort I would give to those who think that you must have a funeral in Zambia right now, the way you want it, or nothing. Should take a step back. Don't force situations. When time is right, it will be solved.
Look, I was driving, rushing over here quickly. I didn't get a chance to read the tabloid that has a headline quoting you, having said it's fine, you can bury in South Africa, right?
I don't think I've made that statement, but I think if there's a barrier in South Africa, it's all right, because the conditions in Zambia are not right.
What do you mean they are not right?
Well, you are tossing around. The boys going up and down. There's too much noise. There's too much emotionalism. We don't have cool heads, and we don't have non-political statements. Everybody's politicking right now. Everybody's politicking right now. So that if you bury in a certain way, some people feel that they've lost out. So it would be good if the family and the government could agree and bring the body back, but only if the agreement is genuine. If it is not genuine, it's not worth doing. I have suspected that there had been no agreement. There were telltale signs, because at the press conference, which was
in South Africa,
media, they said they were coming to announce an agreement. But then I noticed that they didn't have one statement. They had two statements.
Very right.
And those statements were not talking about the same thing. So it was the hint that there was no agreement. So I was not surprised when yesterday we found out that they had actually not agreed. So let's not rush to an agreement which is not an agreement, an arrangement which is not agreed. If it can't work out, take a pause when the conditions are right, and I'm sure the future holds prospect that the conditions are right, because the only thing making these conditions the way they are is the prospect of election in 2026. That's all. If we are honest, that's what it's all about. So the elections, the situation will change. We don't have leaders who are able to put their personal interests and personal wishes aside. There is even talk that if you have a state funeral, the president has to be there. That's not even correct.
Are you sure?
We had I don't know whether it was official funerals or state funerals just a few months ago.
What is the difference, maybe?
Well, there is a slight difference. I think a state funeral is a higher grade,
right,
of, and an official funeral is lower. But basically, they are both state functions.
Right.
And we had two such functions in recent. When my comrade Edith passed away.
That's right.
The president attended the church service, I'm told.
Right.
But he was able to delegate to the vice president for the burial site. When Dr. Roger Chongwe passed away,
right,
the president didn't come to the church. He delegated it to the vice president. And he didn't go to the burial site. He delegated it to a minister. So presidential presence can be delegated if there is wisdom. If it becomes a thorny issue, if the point is not to assert one's authority, one's presence, one's power, if the aim is to give the former president a state funeral, which is honorable and peaceful, without acrimony, then some of the thorny issues can be put aside. So there are all sorts of options of flexibility which are not being exercised because people have other motivations. They have other motivation for which they want the funeral to go exactly the way they want because it fits their motivation, which all have to do with the 2026 election, unfortunately.
Now, let me ask you this question. I know that the president can choose to delegate and he himself stays away, but in a situation, in this circumstance where the deceased said he would not want to see the president near his body, and if the president stays away based on that wish by the deceased, it's a bit embarrassing. You want to think that
I mean, there are two things. One, I know Africans.
Yeah.
Africans have difficulty even writing their wills.
Right.
Accepting that they're about to die.
Yes.
Is not very common. It is possible.
Right.
That someone accepts that I'm going to die and starts decreeing.
Right.
So there is no evidence that right. The president said that. Even if he said it, because you can say something in anger.
That's right.
There are families where someone says, when I die, cremate my body.
That's right.
And then families after you are dead, they decide. They can decide to
otherwise,
follow your order or not follow your order. It's nothing unusual. So even if he said it, if the family doesn't insist or feel that they also, in other words, if the family says, because he said that it must be that way, it means that's what they think. Those who are saying that he said that, the bottom line is that that's what they think themselves. If the rest of people are not dead, don't think it, it can be corrected. It can be done differently. But it must only be done differently if there is a general agreement. The question of embarrassment This is where wisdom comes in. That sometimes someone has to sacrifice themselves. To be embarrassed for the sake of peace is not dishonorable.
Right.
And it's not even embarrassing. It may momentarily look like embarrassing, but afterwards it will be recognized that someone was prepared to sacrifice themselves to be embarrassed for the sake of peace. That's a very good thing. That's a wise thing. If fear of embarrassment becomes your priority, that under no circumstances must I be embarrassed, even if it causes hell, I must prevent myself from being embarrassed. That is not a very wise leadership position. And it doesn't help us. As I say, none of these things have to be done the way we want to. If we fail to agree, if there is failure of an agreement, let's agree to disagree and let things be done. Whether it involves burial in South Africa, it's fine. When the conditions are different, they can be a reburial.
But then
in a peaceful environment.
Let us all get.
And also, what's very important is that, as I say, this crisis is good because it reveals how we are, how we live. There is no need for, it is meaningless for us, just on the occasion of burial, to be civil to each other, to be nice to each other, to love each other, just for the event of burying. Then after burial, we go back on each other's throats, and before burial. So we should now be re-examining, how have we been behaving towards each other before now, which has made it possible for this embarrassing situation to take place. That is what is most important, to resolve, to stop behaving in a manner that can reproduce this embarrassing situation. And it's not the first time the embarrassing situation has been reproduced. As I told you, some of these problems we are facing now were there from the very beginning. When former Vice President Kapwepwe passed away and he needed to be buried, many people felt that President Kaunda shouldn't be there. In fact, he bulldozed his way there, and he was booed throughout. Even the coffin he bought for his friend was put aside, and he was buried traditionally without a coffin. They rejected the coffin President Kaunda took. And this was then. So the relationship was like that because of how Mr. Kapwepwe had been treated before. When he agreed to lead the UPP party and he went for a by-election and won the seat in Mufrila, before he even went to parliament, he was beaten up at Kamwala by UNIP thugs, by UNIP cadres. And those who beat them up got rewarded. The leader of that group was made governor of Ndola and later ambassador to Japan. Even after he had been released from prison, while he was at home in Chinsali, armed police went to his farm, woke him up early in the morning, made him walk around those hills looking for buried arms. When they were not found, he was put in jail in a water-soaked prison. Not prison, police station, where his lawyer had to travel from Lusaka to try and release him from there. So after that, with that background, when he passed away, those who loved him, those who felt for him, felt that the president of a government that can do that to him should not attend. So even what is being talked about now is not new to Zambia. And the reason it keeps reoccurring is the way we treat each other. Our failure to accept that Zambians should have a right to form or not form, to join or not join parties of their choice, and that is legitimate. To disagree with the president, to want to replace the president, to want someone else to be president, should not be treason, not mean being jailed. And this Public Order Act should be abolished because it has been abused from beginning to end to stop the freedom of movement, freedom of assembly, freedom of speech. And in a regime like that, you can't suddenly press pause just for the moment of burial. Then after burial, you go back to the same behavior that caused the crisis. That is what we should be talking about now.
Should we be talking of enacting laws that will help us solve these problems for once and for all?
No, our laws, it's attitude, it's motivation, it's dishonesty, it's selfishness, it's power hungriness, it's greed for power, greed for materials, greed for money. The assumption that government and governance and leadership is a privilege to be at an eating table where you should eat alone with just your supporters. That is what is wrong. And there is no law that can change that mental state. The laws as they exist now, there's for a long time now, there's been a cabinet decision, which is quite legal, about how to conduct state funerals, official funerals, how many days of mourning. It is enough for people who are politically mature.
But in the absence of that, of political maturity, don't you think that you then need
then it won't help you to have laws because the politically immature want to obey the laws. We had a constitution in the Independence Constitution which said that changes to the constitution must be put before the referendum of all the people. Then the government cheats the country, holds a referendum to remove that referendum provision in 1969. From then on, we've licensed the constitution to be changed by parliament on the lie that parliamentarians represent the people. When they don't, they represent their party, they represent their president. They've never changed the constitution on a nationalistic win-win basis. They've changed the constitution to make it easier for somebody, to make it easier for some party to keep power or to win elections. So that even when there are good laws, democratic laws, bad people will change them or just disobey them. Our Bill of Rights is intact. It provides for freedom of movement, provides for freedom of assembly, provides for freedom of speech. But bad leaders who put new laws, like the laws that are being considered now, to criminalize certain expressions for partisan reasons, for personal reasons, for reasons of making it easier for you to win and making it harder for those who want to replace you to be able to reach out to the people and convince them to support them. So that it is not the law, it's the people that is wrong. it is our attitude, it's our motivation, it's our dishonesty, it's our selfishness, it is our failure to sacrifice for the leadership of the country to be able to provide a service to all the people on a non-partisan basis. In other words, if you are a Democrat, it has been said by many people that to be a Democrat is to agree for the right of people, not only those who agree with you, but especially those who disagree with you. To facilitate for the freedom of expression by those who disagree with you. That is what the test of a real leader who is democratic, who provides space for people who don't agree with him to also be free to speak and to act and to meet and to move. And that's where our failure is. The Independence Constitution was good enough, provided for us to be able to manage all sorts of things which I'm mismanaging. We have, even before 2021, after the elections, it was very embarrassing. It's almost as embarrassing as the present crisis, that you needed the Secretary General of Commonwealth Secretariat, you needed President Kikwete and the President of Sierra Leone to talk with Zachariah Banda, to talk the losing candidate to accept the elections. It's not because there were no laws of how you were supposed to act. We've had a great demonstration in the election in Botswana, where at the swearing in of the president, all former presidents, including the losing president, were present, smiling, shaking hands with each other smoothly. The laws that are in Botswana, what you do after the election, are the same as in Zambia. But they did not need outsiders to pacify, to plead with someone to give up power. They didn't. So that we should look at ourselves as being the problem rather than the laws.
Now, let's let's have a conversation around, because obviously we are where we are because there are background issues to this. Let's talk about the former President Emmanuel Act, for example. In this case, we know that the deceased, after retiring from active politics, he came back from retirement, and obviously that meant that according to the law, he can't draw his benefits and obviously what is accrued to him. And worse off, he doesn't even get his medical support. Although we do understand that it was offered, but it was rejected. I'm not sure whether that is true or not. But also, the fact that he had to go and seek medication for himself, and they are saying by well wishers, obviously they supported, but also left this country in a manner that he was living as an ordinary person. And I think the impasse now is, where is your interest coming from? I know you've talked about the fact that why should we seem to be sympathetic on the day of the burial, but looking at where this is coming from, how can we heal this situation? Is this a bad law that a former president, if he returns back to politics, they give up their benefits? I mean, we have.
I think personally, I did not support the conditional provision of privileges
of the former head of state.
I didn't support it, but it is the law.
Why didn't you support it?
Because I believe that if I retire, I have my retirement benefits from a job with you, and you hear that I've found another job, I don't want you to come to me to take my benefits away. I don't. So I don't support that law at all.
Mm.
But it must be said that the victims of that law supported that law.
Yeah.
The victims of that law supported that law when there was no prospects of the victim being them.
Right.
And that is part of the problem I'm saying. That you see, a real democrat, a real democratic spirit is demonstrated by someone facilitating the freedom or the privilege of those who disagree with him, rather than facilitating the freedom of himself and those who agree with them. Now, as long as our spirit is that way, we'll be in this place. And under President Chiluba, again, President Kaunda wanted to come back. Even before he wanted to come back,
Yeah.
he was being accused of wanting to come back before he announced it.
Yeah.
Almost the same things that President Lungu was complaining, that if I go to church, they say I'm politicking. If I'm jogging, they say I'm politicking. Even KK, if he appeared somewhere, he said he was politics, until finally he decided to come back to politics. Then they withdrew. Although when we say they withdrew his privileges, it's probably not exactly accurate, because by knowing what the rules are, by deciding to go back into politics, you are actually deciding to go by that total package of law. As I say, I don't agree with that provision
Yeah.
of the law, but all the victims have agreed with it.
Yeah.
They've agreed with it when it was not them who were prospective victims.
Right.
Okay, so that this behavior is really related to that. Mm. But despite that law existing, all the things that you can do to give someone at least an official funeral, a state funeral, or the state to have a role in someone's funeral, there are no laws that stops the president to declare a state funeral, an official funeral.
Right.
Decides that Mr. Muwanga, who is an ordinary Zambian, but he somehow deserves to be respected that way. The state can say, we'll pay for the flight from where he died,
Yeah.
we'll pay for his coffin, we'll pay for his funeral, the president can attend his funeral. There's nothing. So where there is goodwill, despite the existence of these laws, even if the late President Lungu had forfeited his privileges and or whatever medical supply, there was nothing to stop the state from facilitating his medicals. If there was goodwill, they could do it. They are not bound not to give it. They may not be bound to do it, but they are not bound not to do it. And that privilege has been handed over to many ordinary Zambians. So the problem is not really the fact that he went back into politics. And if you listen to the reasons that I heard President Lungu say why he was trying to come back into politics, it was quite embarrassing. said he had to come back to politics because his family was being harassed. What a political reason. That you want to be president again, because if you are not president again, your family will be harassed. So it's either we have to look at why was his family being harassed? Was his family being harassed? That is where the solution should be. So that, but despite that, if there was goodwill and good relationship, his some of the privileges could be granted to him, particularly medical ones. Maybe the salary might be a little difficult. Even the definition of coming back into politics needs to be examined. What does it mean? Because an ordinary, this is why I don't agree with that law. Because an ordinary citizen must have complete political freedom to form or not form, to participate or not participate in politics. To deny someone the right to participate into politics, to deny an essential part of their citizenship. But because we think governance and leadership is an eating opportunity, not a service opportunity, not a civic responsibility, that's how we have these laws. That assumes that being president is to be in charge of this eating table. And after president, your priority is to receive salary. Your priority is to have privileges, to have cars, to have security, to have medical services, which your ordinary citizens don't have. So there's something wrong there. Just not on this occasion, but there's something fundamentally wrong on that score.
So let me get you right. In summary, before I open the phone lines, what you are essentially saying is that this situation as it stands now, there's no harm in the current president staying away from the funeral as the family wishes. We'll take it that it's family because we are not sure whether it is the deceased wish. And that also you were right on the same press conference that obviously was to announce the agreement. There was, on the family side, there was a statement that the wishes of the deceased that the president should not be near the body.
Yes.
And on the other side, the secretary to cabinet says the head of state will preside over the funeral.
Yes. Even that was a very, one must congratulate Mr. Kangwa. He's such a great diplomat. You see, he could have said it more crudely, but
Right.
he said it so gently that the president will preside. But if you look at the program that came out,
Yeah. And that's where the issue is.
it starts with the president departs to go to the airport. The president receives. President Mulungushi, the president. So really the whole program is the president. So those whose quarrel is with the presence of the presidents would regard that if they think they had agreed to have the power to stop the president, then of course their things didn't go their way. Okay. Now your question is that if, let me say frankly that, yeah, there's nothing wrong with the president not attending the funeral. It will not be the first state funeral he has not attended, a president has not attended. And the presidential powers to delegate does not prevent anybody else going there. He can delegate that to anybody. It doesn't even have to delegate it to his vice president. He can delegate it to a minister. He can delegate it to the Chief Justice, can delegate it to the Speaker of the National Assembly.
But let's also have in mind that there would be delegates, for example, heads of states and former heads of states from different countries, and the hosting president is not anywhere near that ceremony. What does that do to
even that? There is no. You know what happens that if a head of state from a country just passes through the airport in Lusaka, just passing through on transit, it is very normal for the president to rush to the airport just to
greet and
okay, but it is not prevented from delegating someone else to go there. He can delegate someone to represent him at the meeting of the organization, the African Union. He can delegate someone to go and represent him at the UN. So the delegation, and it could be for any reason, that he has another engagement or whatever. It's not mandated. But if what is most important is the personal assertion of the authority and the rights of the person of the president, then obviously there will be no compromise, because he has a right to be there. He has a responsibility to be there, even though he can delegate that responsibility. But if the real motivation is that I must be seen to be in charge, it will be embarrassing to me if I'm not seen. I'll look like I've given up, I've been defeated if I'm not seen. If that is what is most important, then there will be no compromise. But if what is important is that let this process go smoothly, even at the expense of my not exercising my rights, even at the expense of my seeming to be embarrassed, then there will be flexibility. And as I say, if that flexibility is exercised, some of us would say we are so lucky to have a wise president who's prepared to be embarrassed or to withhold his authority for the sake of ensuring that this essential part of having a burial that is instant free, that is not noisy, that is not acrimonious. If that becomes the most important thing you want, then there will be flexibility.
But you did allude to the fact that there are political interest in this whole issue, looking at 2026 elections. Now, you are a former advisor to a president on political affairs. Yes, we have politics to play because we've got elections next year, and here is the situation, and you've noted that there are politics at play. How do you politically advise a head of state?
Well, let's give an example. When my brother, my comrade, President Mwanawasa passed away.
Yes.
And Zachariah Banda was vice president, and they had to immediately be acting president.
That's right.
During the arrangement for this, I know from first hand, he faced a lot of pressure.
Okay.
He even was insulted. He was accused of all manner of things because there were demands, again, from this term, famous term, which has become famous, from the family.
Right.
Demanding, they want this, they want that. As you remember, Levy's body had to be taken around each province. The law didn't require that. And it was not the president's wish. but he bent backwards. He accepted being shouted at by some of the members of the family, accusing him of all manner of things. His attitude was to let them have their will, even against his own opinions. He did. He could have said, no. Cabinet says there should be 7 days period of mourning, not 30 days. But the family insisted, and they shouted at him. Even before the body came, he was being bombarded. He could easily have said, I'm now president. You can't talk to me like that.
Right.
And he can read the riot act of what cabinet decision was, in which Levy himself agreed that there should be 7 days mourning for head of state. Levy had agreed, but his family demanded more, and the president was flexible enough to give it to them. And I think it was a wise thing for him to do that. Otherwise, there would have been all sorts of mourning.
Could have costed him an election.
No, I think in his case,
I mean, if he had acted otherwise,
it is the issue of talking about of pride,
right,
of embarrassment. How can I be ordered when I'm president, when I'm acting president? Right. So there was a personal ego, possibility of him making a decision egotistically,
right,
with the backing of the law, or ignore his own ego and allow, because whatever was being demanded would come and go.
Yeah.
And it did come and go. And everything was normal. That's why I'm saying that even if there is a barrier in South Africa, it will happen and go. If a future situation provides for a second relocation of the barrier site, it will not be something that has never been done. It will not be something that cannot be done. But it depends, what is our priority? Our ego, our personal political interest, or is it true that really we care that the barrier should have dignity, should be peaceful, should be a healing event, not to some, but to everyone, should be a lesson to everyone, should be an occasion for us to re-examine how we have related to each other wrongly in a manner that makes this crisis possible. How we can change so that this sort of thing does not happen again.
Well, this is the Thursday edition of the Burning Issue. Our guest is Prince Akashambatwa Mbikusita-Lewanika. He is a political scientist, historian, and a governance expert. He is also a former cabinet minister and former advisor to the president on political affairs. And we will be taking your phone calls on 0955-221515. I would ask that you have your headsets on. Here we are. Yeah, so that you can get the callers audible enough. So once again, the number you are calling us on is 0955-221515. That's the number you are calling us on. Good morning, and welcome to the. Now kama wakabwanje ndimanda nzina.
Ndine sepiso ndimino gadena wazaki.
Sepiso.
Yo, ga gesi mwa ukabwanje father.
Bueno.
Yo, father.
You have a minute, Sepiso? Yes, please.
Yes. ine okamba kwanga faza makamba zinthu exactly okay nkambe that is my own opinion but then wakamba faza even vefunga kukonga exactly zemakamba kwa base aggregation yokuti tani zemakamba exactly 100% ngongani zikomo zemakamba kuti tese kepo mitu ma-African zekwakamba genuine ma-African kutenchitikani kani tavicherengeta vonse kuti kaziyambana as long as kuti taneonesesa ni vazungu mentality yavazungu vazungu ndivatitira onse mavuto ndiafter hatred choka yakuvazi kwanaza kuza zakupaka pampando vanakupasa vochita masanction kuti uyu munzako muzo ise vasona so until vetafuna tena kuzatika konka America mabim tereza makamba kuti let's make United States of Africa once let's come in Gaddafi ngepenga nkala hili ngete zingaside na jera sinatani vote zingaside kwati kongateva mine vifaza azonga lisote zamukala nisota because political ideas azambo support azonga nikasoka tukwata azambo support azonga pata katani azambo support kwa nivarong azambo visupport azambo viona kini nombo azonga zampata kwa nikwata mbanga fata makamba bune exact 100% please ni watu fankren kwa msinga tikazingana kona mafia au tikazigani zira why iti ande mtendo mafia ndeti kufa maridia zivena nguva bazungweza karapu manankani why chikukala seti forma disease osia na sema kansa tani tikala vonse bazi bani bazungu kwa report yopo bwera jenda kama tibabwera report kwa kuti babwera muno mzambe kuti baboshana nankani human rights but imbapo zavenzoziwa kuti apa manje ukapata msikiza mtu kutapata kwani.
Thank you, Sir Piso. Thank you. Thank you very much, Sir Piso, for your contribution. Let me take some more calls on 0955-221515. Good morning. Hello, good morning.
Morning, Mazar.
Morning. Thank you for calling. Your name and where are you calling us from?
My name is Mr. Evans, calling you from Chazanga.
Yes, Mr. Evans.
Yes, please. Greetings goes to the guests in the studio, out in the studio there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, please. Yeah, as you have brought this issue whereby we are talking about the late former president, that's a thing which I'm taking on. I think you have brought a number of issues, but the thing is that the sensitization over these issues, they are late, not there. So it's for you, the leaders, to come and sensitize us as the public who doesn't know what it's called. Because for us, we are just speaking anyhow. Some they are saying, oh, it's a law whereby, we don't know anything. So we are begging you to come and inform us the way it goes. As for the president, for the former president, I thought maybe it's a mandate whereby it bury him where the others have been buried. Now I come to aware that according to your explanation that you can even bury him anywhere. It's also in the rules. Let me, whether, I don't know, but according to my understanding, it means you can bury that president everywhere. It's also a state funeral, things like that. Anyway,
yeah.
I'd like to pause here. Yeah, I think you have hit my point.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Evans. Let me take one more call, then I'll give you an opportunity to respond. Let me take this one. Good morning.
Good morning, Judge.
Good morning. Thank you for calling. Your name and where you're calling us from?
Moses, I'm calling you from within Lusaka. Indeed, Doctor, good morning. It's nice to hear from you after a long time.
Good morning. Good morning.
Yeah, now my word is that we seem to have a very bad communication. I remember during the MMD when our late president was sick, there was very good communication between the government and us, the citizens. But in this government, we've all been complaining that it's like the communication is not really there. Even what the family has communicated to us to say, some of that program, the change of some of the things, we were not told. Why didn't they just tell them to say, this is the program that we want to have as a government? So I think for me, the communication is very, very bad. And people like you who are the senior citizens of this country, why can't you be involved in such critical matters like this? Because it's giving us now sleepless nights now. Even our small businesses are being affected because people are living, there is a lot of anxiety. So the government should come out and tell us what is the way forward. That's my question. God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Doc, I want to give you I want to give you an opportunity to react. But let me quickly squeeze in this text message, which has come from our partner radio station in Mansa. It says, good morning, Aka. In the absence of the law regarding state funerals in Zambia, what do you think is the basis of the current standoff between government and Lungu's family? According to you, between the government and the family, who do you think must be in control of the funeral if we have to choose one?
Well, ideally, if we had good relationship among ourselves, between the ruling party, opposition parties, between the family of
the deceased, yes,
the deceased and the government, I think everybody would agree that we would like to have a national state funeral, the full one. And even the family, it's an honor to the family of a former president to have a member of their family who was head of their family so honored to have a state funeral. It's ideal, but only if it can be done with everybody on the same page, with no other agendas other than to give honor to the deceased. Unfortunately, we are not in an ideal situation. And that is where the problems come. That there's also a power relationship. You see, since the deceased went outside the country privately, you could say, he was in hospital privately, so that the people who were there when the death occurred had the power over the body. So at that point, government could only come in agreement with them, because the alternative would be even more embarrassing than the situation we are in, where you use police force to go and seize the body to say we are the government, it's our body, which would be very nasty. So that was out. So the circumstances demanded that there should be negotiations with the family.
Right.
And there was prospect that they could agree. The problem arises that they've failed to agree. And some of the reasons they've failed to agree on have been articulated, have been said openly. Others we suspect are not being said. There is nobody who's going to say that, my position, I want it to be this way so that I could easily win the next election. Nobody will tell you that. But there may be people with that motivation, which is not out in the open. It can only be guessed. So there are some spoken and unspoken reasons why this agreement has failed to materialize. And I'm saying has failed. I'm not ruling out the possibility that we may be lucky enough that by today, by tomorrow, there will be an agreement. That is what would be ideal. Now, there was a question of that under these circumstances where there is disagreement, what should happen? This is where I was using my football Usakile language,
right,
to take a ball a punch.
That's right.
Let's rest. Let's take a step back and let the family have its way and let them do it their own way. The other problem is that from what has come out to the public, both the government and the family want a state funeral, but they want a state funeral in a certain way.
Right.
I think the bottom line is that the family want a state funeral
Yeah.
without the presence of the president. Maybe they are not saying that bluntly, but basically what they've said, you can conclude. And the state, the government wants a state funeral with the president at the center of it. And they are taking the position that there is no state funeral without the president taking charge. So they are not being flexible. They would need to be flexible on that in order for the state funeral to go along with that. Either the family is flexible enough to say, since we want a state funeral, we have to tolerate that the president will take charge. Or the government will say, since we want a state funeral, we have to be flexible that he can delegate it to somebody else. All that is possible. There is nothing preventing the family from being flexible. There's nothing preventing the government from being flexible. But if each of the two parties insists on being inflexible, there will be no agreement. And under the circumstances where there is no agreement, rather than the family cannot force a state funeral. So if they don't want the state funeral which is on offer, they do their own burial. The state...
Is it possible to have a former head of state not have a state funeral?
Yes, it is possible. I've given you the example of Kwame Nkrumah.
That's right.
He ended up having a state funeral 10 years after he died. They finally rested him in the Memorial Park in Accra. 3 months, but earlier he was even buried in his village before he was transferred. And we also had examples of Zimbabwe where the family did not want President Mugabe to be buried in Heroes Acres in Harare, but somehow they negotiated that. So where there is flexibility and where there is negotiation, where you can reach a win-win situation where everybody agrees to what is agreed, that is the ideal situation. If the ideal situation is not there, then we have to take the second best. But I'm saying to the nation of Zambia that even the worst scenario that is buried somewhere else outside the country is all right. When the conditions are suitable, his body can be brought back when everybody is agreed. When Kwame Nkrumah was still alive, if he had gone to Ghana, they would have arrested him, maybe even hanged him. But after he was dead, they wanted his body. But those who were thinking that we can't give the body of Kwame Nkrumah to people who overthrew him, to people who were celebrating when he was overthrown. So there was no agreement. So he ended up being buried first in Guinea. Then when there was a change of government, he was buried in his village. But ultimately, where his body lies now, everybody of all political persuasion, even those who liked him, didn't like him, are quite agreeable that he should be there. So a time came, took a long time, when there was consensus, there was an agreement, and there could be a burial in which everybody attends and everybody is relatively comfortable with the decision. Even in this case, the future cannot absolutely have no prospect for a state funeral of whatever kind to take place later. But my own view is that I would rather not have a state funeral which is acrimonious.
Right.
You can imagine the statements that we have heard leading up to this crisis. If you now have a funeral of people making speeches, it will no longer be about giving an honorable burial to the president who has died. It will be the same repeat of the same acrimonious exchanges, the same inflexibility, the same partisanship, and the same hatred.
Well, let's take some more calls. Once again on 0955-221515. Good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for calling. Your name?
This is Senior Citizen Fanwa Mangala.
Fanwa Mangala. Please go ahead, sir.
Omwana mulena babaluma sasakima ziwani.
Kozo shangwe muyoye.
Sande bishani tunez. Sir, you are speaking so well. Some of us have just known some of the things that you have explained to us today. And I think a lot of people are benefiting from your explanation. You are clearly explaining things as they should be. One thing that I've observed with our government is their tendency of bulldozing their way. You can even see with the amendment of the Constitution, how many people have rejected it, but they are still bulldozing their way. For me, like you have explained, I also thought in the same way, say, if I were the president myself, in fact, for me, I would have said, I would have taken it upon myself that no, I think I will not attend for the sake of the burial taking place. I don't want this situation to continue. Please, can you go ahead the way that you think? But the president we have in this country is one person who likes bulldozing his way. The way people say no, to continue saying, I'll go ahead. The way people say no, all these things seem to be coming from him. Because nobody has more power than him. It's him actually trying to influence this. People don't want him to be there. But we've heard, when the body arrives, to be there, presiding over it. This is what the family doesn't want. The family are right for whatever they are saying. For me, I think they are right because it's a family issue. Well, if he has a role to play, they should have actually told him that. But what they don't want is him to be there. It's not in dispute that the former president was exposed to that kind of degrading treatment by the current government. He was exposed to that kind of, subjected to that kind of treatment. Very degrading. One of which that I still remember is that one of pulling him out of the plane. He was flying to one of the two Koreans there, but he was pulled out of the plane at the airport. That was very degrading. So I think such ways myself, I don't doubt that they didn't come from him. They came from him.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Fano Mangala, for your contribution. Let me take another one on 0955-221515, and also you can send us a message if you don't mind on the same number, that is 0955-221515, and we'll be reading out a few messages pretty soon. So let's first take this call. Good morning.
Yes, sir. Good morning.
Morning to you. Thank you very much for calling. Your name and where are you calling us from?
Thank you very much. Lukulu Voice on the line.
Lukulu Voice.
Yes.
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. That's one share. Washemi for.
Kozo shangwe riketire muyoye.
Itume shangwe. Lizo akaye mkina chinyama.
Shangwe.
Kwa hai kwa Lukulu.
Ensha.
This time around, I want you, citizen, you are a senior citizen, in controversy over this matter. We are lucky. We are lucky today because we have gone through this. We have buried two serving presidents, serving when they die on the throne. Secondly, we have buried three two, if I can say, there should be three former presidents.
Yes.
And this is the one who's supposed to, again, now we have the controversy today. Then we have got our own constitution, what it says, and we have got also our own rules, how we bury the former president, how we bury the serving president. The family always are engaged. But in the situation where we are tolerating the family to override the authority just because they have got a bigger say. What of the Zambian family? Because according to what I know, is that Edgar Lungu has got a bigger family, which is called Zambia. Immediately, you come in as the president of the Republic of Zambia, people vote for you, you are there. You become now the state asset. Therefore, whatever that happens to you, you'll be regarded as such. So how do you look at this situation now whereby the family want to bring these kind of things, havoc in this manner? The national mourning has been declared twice. And embarrassing so in the other foreign country, you arrange everything, at the last minute everything is prepared, you cancel that. Is that okay? What is the counsel to you? What are you helping? Are you helping the situation? According to me, the bigger family, the Zambian, is us. When you just become a Republican president, you become a bigger family. Your bigger family is the Zambian people. Of course, you are where we are coming from, but now you leave all that thing. Now you become a head of state. So your bigger family is Zambian. So why is it difficult for the Zambian government to do what's needful for the former head of state? Why this argument? What's the problem?
Thank you very much.
We need your input, Akashambatwa. We need your input and direct the best way of doing things so that you cannot set a bad presidency in future. That's all he says. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lukulu Voice. Let me give you one more, and then I can have your reactions to them. 0955-221515. That's the number you're calling us on if you'd like to be part of this conversation. Good morning. Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Morning to you. Thank you for calling. Your name and where are you calling us from?
Wandama, this is Brother Henderson Atiko, known as the Triple H.
Brother who? Again?
Triple H.
Triple H.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Yes, please.
Kaze mulibwanji mu studio. Mwabwa buti wadala.
Mpotuli mulibayomo.
Wonderful. No, that's your opinion. You are a Zambian. Well done, my brother, man. Nampocha mfano wanga Lukulu Voice. Namu mwangana namuposha my cousin very bitter. I think Mr. Zaki, wamene vichikika hapa, hiyo na munga ine, kusogolo kwa meti enda constitution kufunya kuyangana. Whereby, family nikuwafunza ati, umufunaga, tikamushikire pa presidential presi, o mufuna utenga kwanu. Zani ma embarrassment munga jamena achitika. Ndiye kuonesa kuti Zambia, kufunika kuitemperera. Bitterness is so high. And the political, pamene sifunika unkana political pamariro, kendoreta manje political. Muyangana chema mene iri Mr. Zaki and my brother man in the studio. Amena fungo chosa statement out, uyu mwenzeze 30 mani. Ana saving for 7 years. Amena fungo kuchosa mauti zalira 7 years, 7 days or 3 days in done. It's the government. But we're given your brother, my brother who is in the studio, is the one who is in forefront. Even you come back to know who provides our own security. So which means our many opposition, but the hatred yamene singa sire, yamene funiga mapempero. And if you have put rabo chimozi pariga, ayamariro. If PF amenebali post wapasa urembo uri government amenebali given urembo there's my ministers ene kampiongo there's my ministers kama Kebi Zulu is a lawyer Mometi Manverera why sanga guarding it because no the constitution ikamba so uyu muntu afunike chita so but wakazimu senzesa bazimai vaja wakazimu na yeye avomera ka ati is a lawyer ka avomera instead out aonese maturity uyu muntu amwalira tapange politics. But the PF, they are busy making politics. Politics. Please. Can't Garego mature. As I control Mr. Zaki, ife tamboona kuti anthu amene bakamba chizungu mu Zambia palibe ntchito. That's why constitution ifunira kuleta munthu amene ayina knowledge aliwonse ankalimpandizira. Amene bapanga they are fake people, 3/4. Why nikamba so? Wainamanta kumasuka kuyimirira chilungamo. Then but amene si wanaende ku school, which is very bad, embarrassing in South Africa. Otherwise, my brother man, continue.
Thank you.
For this topic.
Thank you very much.
Nanga ba family bafuna kuti ba HH basangarepo. Ba HH pamene tenze the opposition. When KK died, tenzo tambira pachani pa TV, which is shameful. Mulibana on the map. Ba HH wananchito again, he was broke. When the owner Zachariah Banda, he was not there. But he wanted because of the but I frustrate so but they are condemning. Again, the same people. If I check one hour ago, Mr. Jakeko Kamariro, Bagankade foot, Muzanzara footy, Miroboyama footy, no the president, when I keep attending Mariamuzak. We don't know how Mazambian Africa Guasunga.
Thank you.
We are appealing to a new Don government. Basieni Mariro Nangafuna ni Mariro yao, Basieni. Or I check and Mariro, Basieni.
Thank you, Triple H. Your time is up. Your time is up, unfortunately.
Is very important because
Thank you.
It doesn't belong to any church.
Thank you. Let me quickly ask you to react before we start concluding.
Yeah, it's Wachinyama, I think, has brought a point that that the family is exerting a strong position where he thinks that they shouldn't, because government should be in authority. There is a logistical factor here that the late President Lungu left the country as a private person. He stayed in hospital as a private person. So he was in the hands of private people, his family. So at the time when the death occurred, you could more or less say the body was in the possession of the family. So there will be no decent way in which the body could be transferred to other hands without an agreement with those who had him, this family. So I think logistically there was that. But also in terms of precedent, in all our burials, the government has engaged the families. Whether it's President Kaunda's funeral, the family had their say. And again, even there was some tug of war.
It went into court even. Yeah.
It even went to court.
Yeah.
The Mwanawasa funeral, there was also a little bit of tug of war, except that reported from first-hand knowledge. When the tug of war was starting, the president decided not to participate in the push and pull, and to even bend backwards to allow the proposals from the families which he himself did not agree with.
Yeah.
So we also have a precedent where there is a presidential exercise of flexibility. We also have the same now. The family could not be disregarded. Having engaged, the government agreed to engage them in negotiation. We cannot fault a government for willingness to negotiate. In fact, the government decision to negotiate resulted in the announcement that an agreement had been reached. And I think everybody celebrated that there is that agreement. The complication is that later on, by yesterday, we discovered that actually the agreement was not solid, and a point of disagreement has been returned to. Now, under those circumstances, the choice that is there is for one, the family on one hand, the government on the other hand, to be flexible or not to be flexible. If the government is inflexible and the family is inflexible, the family which holds the body cannot be forced decently. I'm sure they can be forced indecently to hand over the body. So it is very, very important that there should either be an agreement to do the one program or an agreement to disagree. But I'm saying that even if there is an agreement to disagree and the family keeps the body and buries where it wants them to be buried, there will be prospects in future when the conditions change to do whatever state funeral may be agreed at that time. So it's not, I've given the example of Ghana where 10 years later, Kwame Nkrumah was buried in an atmosphere which was more conducive, more consensus driven than would have been the case if he had been buried in 1972. So that also is a possibility. Then your caller also brought the point that which relates to inflexibility. He criticizes the current president and his leadership for having a bulldozer governance style. And I must say, I've also observed it. I happen to have been in a different position during the Komboka before the last, when the Barrosi in African government had chosen His Majesty Chitimukuru to be the guest of honor. And despite pleading with the president not to attend, he exercised his authority, his personal interest to still be there, which was a little bit awkward. So he has demonstrated a bulldozer leadership style in some cases, but I don't think that it is absolutely impossible for him to be flexible sometimes, including this time or other occasion. So the fact that he has been bulldozing certain situations doesn't mean he has to bulldoze every situation. So I think that is an important observation. It really relates to flexibility in governance. And the flexibility is not just required on the part of government or the president's leadership. It is also required on the family side. And if it is lacking on either side, then we are in a situation where we have to agree to disagree. But be comforted that even if we agree to disagree, even if the burial takes place in a manner that some of us don't want, the future holds prospects for an opening which will allow for a burial which will be non-controversial. It may not be now. And it's very unlikely to be now because of this factor of the 2026 election.
Finally, as we come to a close, the church seems silent on this matter. Are you comfortable with the fact that they are silent?
The church? No, I don't think they've been silent. I think some of the church leaders were involved in the negotiation, which led to the apparently premature announcement of an agreement. So they have been involved in that. And so I have no quarrel about the church. And in fact, the role of the church in politics is a dicey one.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
Yeah. They have been involved positively in when we reached the controversial post in the reintroduction of multi-party democracy. We actually looked for people who could broker the conflict. We looked for students at the University of Zambia in the history of multi-party.
Yeah.
We asked the students in University of Zambia to intervene, and they actually did call a meeting in Mulungushi, chaired by students. We also later called upon some religious leaders who chaired a meeting which took place in the Anglican Cathedral, which I think was the final agreement. We had agreed that we are returning to multi-party, but there were a few details of how to implement it, more or less like the present case,
Right.
that you are agreed in principle, but there are some loose ends. So to iron out those loose ends, we asked the church, and fortunately, President Kaunda and his government accepted the church as a broker, and we had proposed it, so there was an agreement, because we have to agree on the broker. And when that meeting took place, we thought it was going to be a very difficult meeting, because we had failed to completely seal the agreement to go forward. President Kaunda's attitude at that meeting shocked and surprised us. As soon as we opened the meeting, he announced that he agrees with everything. We didn't know whether it is what the members call Chifukushi or not. But actually, in the presence of the church, the final agreement was made, which allowed us to go forward with all the parties on the same page. And the outcome, this is also very important. The outcome of that agreement, the outcome of agreeing to reintroduce multi-party, the fact that it was agreed was very positive. What was achieved was not just in the interests of those who were advocating for the return of multi-party. It was also in the interest of those who were resisting. So when multi-party democracy was reintroduced, the regime of multi-party democracy gave the same freedom of forming or not forming political parties to everybody, including UNIP people, including non-UNIP people. And this is a lesson going forward, that a real agreement has to be a win-win agreement. An agreement in which one of the party to the contestation is not fully comfortable or is aggrieved will not last long. So that even in this case, you need an agreement which is win-win, not an agreement in which you would say that, oh, the government has won. The government has shown that Boma ni Boma. Or that the family, this is a tough family. They've even defeated the government. Such an agreement will not be good for the future. So that we should be patient and wait for such an agreement to take place, which is win-win, rather than rush forward unilaterally, either using state power or using the vantage point that the family now holds because they have the body, whatever they would do unilaterally would not bring long-term peace and long-term progress. A peaceful outcome, a long-term outcome, which is win-win, is the only way which can bring settlement to this issue without perpetuating the contestation. Anything that would be done unilaterally, either by the government or by the family, would mean after they've done it, the contestation will continue, the division will continue, the partisanship will continue, the politicization will continue, the discomforts will continue. One of several of your callers have also brought in another fact, which should be brought in, that yes, the family cannot be ignored. Yes, the government cannot be ignored, but also that the population of the general population of the country also has a stake in it. They are affected by what happens, both what happens now and what we learn from what happens now to build a better future. They will be affected. So those who are negotiating, if they are still negotiating, should try to come up with an outcome that is win-win for the family, win-win for the government, and win-win for the people. And such a win-win situation cannot come without some flexibility, some dosage of wisdom to put aside personal and sectional and partisan interest for the sake of an overall win-win situation. That is the challenge that the nation faces.
Do you have any concluding remarks?
Let us be at peace, to take a bowler punch. Whatever happens is all right. It will happen now, then there will be national disaster. There's nothing like that. Whatever happens, we'll with it for the future. Someone had mentioned that they've already prepared the burial site. It can be occupied later. We shouldn't injure each other for the sake of making sure that it is occupied today.
Well, Prince Dr. Akashambatwa Mbikusita, scientist, historian, and governance expert, former cabinet minister, and former advisor to the president.
5FM fan. You know, you are introducing you.
Yeah.
There are so many former this, former that, former
There
that.
must be some
Let me
current
say,
somewhere.
what? Is he dead now?
and I know that, you know.
So I'm alive as a fan of 5FM.
Yeah. and I must say that the late Matipi, the proprietor of this station, you were very good friends.
Yes.
And I kept ringing his you know, because
That's
we still
I missed his voice. You've changed.
Yeah, no, it's the one. Let me play it for you. It's
Please,
the one.
let
And
me hear it.
and I was busy. I was busy remembering those lines based on the fact that you brought it out several times. And this is what he said about democracy.
Exactly.
Democracy and freedom of expression is about tolerating the views that you don't like from someone you might not like.
That is exactly
That
what
is
you
it.
and you kept defining what democracy is, and I kept remembering that.
Okay, no, so that's why I'm a fan of 5FM. That is the spirit, and that's the challenge of leadership.
Right.
if you are only a leader who, when you are given a microphone, the only people cheering are those who agree with you. Those who disagree with you are told to shut up or they cry, then you are not a national leader.
Absolutely. Akashambatwa Mbikusita-Lewanika, we are very humbled that you accepted our invitation today, and thank you very much for coming.
Thank you so much, and thank you, listeners, callers, Bakwalukulu, Muyoye, and the rest of you.
Yeah.
Mutende Mwane, Sancho, Zikomo, Siawonga.
Thank you very much. There you have it, listeners. Thank you very much to you for having followed our conversation today. And we greatly thankful to partner radio stations, Tuta FM in Mansa, Mchinga Radio in Chinsali. Thank you very much to Z Radio, ZFM in Kapiri, Spice FM in Kabwe, and on the Copper Belt in Indola, to be precise, Platinum Radio and iWave FM Radio in Chingola. We are thankful, and we will definitely be coming back, God willing, next week for the Tuesday and Thursday editions of The Burning Issue. From all of us here is take care of yourselves and more so of each other. Bye-bye.